You ever been so trapped you can feel the air get thin? Sarah was halfway down that road when the hoofbeats boxed her in. 4 riders, rifles across their laps, whips coiled like snakes. And no matter how fast she walked, she knew she couldn't outrun a horse or a law that already decided she was guilty. She didn't scream. Not yet. Screaming was for people who believed somebody was coming. Sarah kept her pace steady like she'd been taught, head lowered, hands calm. The kind of calm you wear when your life depends on looking harmless. In her pocket was a folded note, a pass, ink on cheap paper, her owner's handwriting, a few words that were supposed to mean protection, like a shield you could carry in cotton and faith. She'd carried that paper every Saturday for 2 years. 3 miles from Henderson's place to the Williams plantation. 3 miles of dirt and dark. 3 miles where the trees didn't talk and the night didn't testify. That pass said she was allowed to visit her husband and be back before a certain hour. Like love came with a curfew. Like marriage was something another man could schedule. Sarah had a husband, though the world refused to call him that. Joshua belonged to a different plantation, a different fence line, a different set of rules. But in their quarters, in their circles, their people had watched them speak vows anyway. No courthouse, no papers, just witnesses who understood that some promises don't need permission. Tonight was supposed to be a good night. Sarah had something she wanted to tell Joshua. Something she'd been holding inside her chest like contraband. 3 months. A child. She hadn't said it out loud yet. Not to the women she worked beside. Not to her mother. Not even to Joshua. She wanted his face to be the first place that hope landed. She wanted his hands to know before the world did. She wanted 2 hours where they could pretend the future belonged to them. That's the kind of thinking that gets you caught slipping. Because while Sarah was picturing Joshua's smile, the game was already moving behind her. The riders came up quick, then slowed on purpose. Not because they needed to, because they wanted her to feel it, the control, the choice. A voice floated down from the lead horse, smooth with hunger. "Look at this." Sarah stepped off the road like she was supposed to. Like she was making room for her betters. She kept her eyes down, but she could still feel them watching the way men watch a thing they think they own. They circled her without rushing, 4 against 1. That kind of math doesn't need a conversation. "Out after dark," one of them said. "That's bold." Sarah swallowed, then reached into her pocket slowly, careful like she was pulling out a blade instead of paper. "Sir, I got permission." Her voice stayed respectful, controlled. Not pleading, yet. Pleading made them feel important. She held the pass up with both hands so there could be no mistake, so there could be no excuse. The lead man took it like it offended him. He tilted it toward the moon like he was inspecting a counterfeit bill. He read it long enough to make Sarah's heart start counting beats. She thought about Joshua waiting. She thought about the time. She thought about the baby, quiet in her body as if it already understood the danger of being noticed. Then the man tore the pass. Not once, again. Paper falling in small, helpless pieces onto the dirt road like dead leaves. Sarah didn't move. Her whole world went still because she finally understood what she'd brought to the wrong kind of people. That pass wasn't protection. It was proof that she believed the rules could save her. The man let the scraps drop and looked down at her like he'd just removed her last excuse to exist. "Paper don't mean nothing," he said. "Not out here." Sarah's mouth opened, then closed. She could feel the other riders shifting in their saddles, not impatient, excited. She tried anyway because she had to. "My master said." The lead man slid off his horse with that slow, practiced calm. A man who knew he could take his time because nobody could stop him. "Your master ain't out here," he said, and that was the real sentence. Not the tearing of paper, not the rifles, not the whips. The sentence was that she was alone. He stepped close enough that Sarah could smell what he'd been drinking. The others dismounted too, boots in dirt, the sound of leather creaking, metal clicking, a circle tightening. Sarah did what smart people do when they see the trap. She tried to make herself smaller. She tried to make her voice softer. She tried to be invisible. But you can't disappear in front of men who came out at night specifically to find someone they could erase. "Hold her," the lead man said, like he was ordering a sack moved from one place to another. Sarah's arms were grabbed, hard. Her shoes scraped the road. She tried to keep her balance, tried to keep her dignity, because sometimes that's the last thing a person has. She said one word, just one, quiet and sharp. Please. And that word hung in the air like a coin tossed onto a table. Not for mercy, for negotiation. They didn't negotiate. What happened next didn't get written into any official report. Not the way it happened. Not the way Sarah felt it. Not the way her body tried to leave her spirit behind just to survive it. Later, people would talk around it. They always talked around it. They'd say she got stopped. They'd say she got handled. They'd say something happened on that road. In those places, everybody understood what something meant. When Sarah finally reached the Williams plantation, the night had moved on without her. 2 hours past the time she was supposed to be there. 2 hours deep into the kind of darkness that doesn't lift when the sun comes back. Joshua saw her first. He ran to her like a man who still believed he could protect his wife just by standing between her and harm. But when he got close, he slowed down, because he could see it. Torn dress, swollen face. A limp that didn't come from walking too far. And the eyes. The eyes looked like they'd gone somewhere else and hadn't fully returned. Joshua started talking fast, questions, promises, rage, like he could build a wall out of words. Sarah didn't answer the questions. She didn't step into the rage. She just grabbed his hand with a grip that surprised him. Not weak, not broken, strategic. And she said something that cut deeper than any bruise. Who you gon' tell? Joshua blinked like he didn't understand. Who you gon' report it to? She asked again, slow, calm, dead certain. Them men, that is the law. Joshua wanted to fight the world. Sarah already knew the world had rules that didn't include them. That night in Joshua's arms, Sarah lost the child she'd been carrying, the news she'd been saving, the future she'd been building in her head. And the men who did it, they rode home, they slept, they ate breakfast. And they woke up still protected, because the scariest part wasn't that 4 men decided to do evil. The scariest part was this. They didn't have to decide. Somebody had already built them a system where doing that to her wasn't a crime. It was a job. And once you understand that, you start looking at every badge, every patrol, every authority a little differently. Because Sarah wasn't the first woman to learn that lesson on a road like that. And she wasn't going to be the last, not even close. Because while Joshua held her and swore he'd make them pay, one of those riders was already thinking ahead. Already imagining how much more power he could get once the state put something official in his hand. A badge, a gun, a uniform that would make what he did on that road look like procedure. And Sarah was about to find out what happens when the same predator comes back wearing a different title. Sarah learned something that night that never left her. Rules don't protect you, patterns do. After that road, she started watching everything. Who rode when, who drank before sundown, which men liked the sound of their own authority a little too much. She moved quieter, spoke less, memorized faces like debts. Pain teaches you fast when nobody else will. Joshua wanted fire, wanted noise. Wanted justice loud enough to shake the fences. Sarah shut that down with a look. Anger makes you visible, she told him, and visible men don't live long. So they survived instead, which is a different kind of courage. Weeks passed, bruises faded, the limp softened. The absence inside her didn't. She went back to work like the earth hadn't opened under her, like something hadn't been taken that could never be returned. That's how the system liked it. Keep moving. Don't stop the machine. But the road never forgot her. And neither did the man who tore up her pass. James Murphy, he wasn't special. That's what made him dangerous. He owned a little land, not enough to matter. No people of his own. No education worth speaking of. But he had one thing the world kept reinforcing. He was white in a place that treated that like currency. Patrolling gave him something he'd never had before. Leverage. At night, with a horse under him and a rifle across his chest, men like Murphy stopped feeling small, stopped feeling ignored. They became judges, executioners. Gods with paperwork backing them up. And Murphy was good at it, not loud, not reckless. He didn't whip first. He watched first, let fear do the work. let silence stretch until people filled it with mistakes. He remembered Sarah because she didn't scream right away. Men like Murphy remember that. Months after the road, words started drifting through the quarters. Names spoken low. Women warning women. Men tightening up when hoofbeats passed. Murphy was riding more often now. Not just the scheduled nights, extra ones, freelance authority. If he caught someone without a pass, he'd say it was unclear. If they had permission, he'd say it didn't look right. If they spoke, he'd call it resistance. And the law nodded along. Sarah stopped walking the road alone after dark. Joshua noticed. Asked once, she shook her head. Some roads ain't safe no more, she said, and some never were. Then the war came. At first it was rumors. White men talking louder, drinking harder, saying words like honor and states' rights while sharpening knives behind the talk. Then uniforms, then marching. The patrols thinned as men left to fight, but the ones who stayed, they stayed mean. Murphy didn't go anywhere. He wasn't built for battle, but he was perfect for control. He kept riding, kept stopping, kept enforcing. By the time the war ended, Sarah was older, harder, still alive. That alone made her dangerous in a quiet way. Freedom came on paper first, announced like a miracle. People cried, hugged, ran, some dropped to their knees. Sarah didn't celebrate, she watched. Because she'd already seen what happened when paper promises met men who didn't respect them, and she was right. The uniforms changed. The patrol sashes disappeared. New badges showed up instead. Same horses, same faces, same tone. James Murphy became Deputy Murphy. Same eyes, same mouth. Now with a star pinned to his chest. The first time Sarah saw him in daylight, her stomach tightened like it used to on that road. He was standing near the market, leaning easy, talking like a man who owned the street. He spotted her. Recognition flickered, then settled into something worse, a smile. He stepped into her path like the years between them hadn't happened. Papers, he said. Sarah handed them over without shaking. Work contract, signed, proper. Murphy looked at them too long, then too short. These don't look right. Sarah felt the old instinct rise, fear, then calculation. They're in order, she said. Calm, respectful, sir. Murphy leaned closer, low voice just for her. Funny thing about order, he said. I decide what it is. For a moment Sarah saw it clearly. The road, the moon, the scraps of paper falling. This was the same stop, different costume. Murphy handed the papers back slowly, let her go, but he didn't move out of her way. Careful where you walk, he said. World still dangerous. Sarah nodded and stepped around him. But she knew what that was. Not mercy, a message. I remember you, I still have power. And next time I might not let you walk away. As Sarah disappeared into the crowd, Murphy watched her go, already thinking ahead. Already adjusting the board. Because men like him don't stop when the rules change. They just learn how to use the new ones better. And somewhere in that city, Sarah understood the truth before anyone wanted to say it out loud. The patrol never ended, it just learned how to blend in. And the next move was coming. Power doesn't announce itself, it tests the room first. After that market stop, Sarah knew the rules had shifted again. Freedom didn't erase danger, it redistributed it, made it quieter, made it wear cleaner clothes. Murphy didn't touch her that day. That was intentional. Men like him understood restraint. Understood that fear ages better when you let it breathe. From then on, Sarah moved like someone who knew she was being watched. She changed routes, changed times. Learned which corners belonged to who. She started treating the city the way smart men treat a rigged card game, never assuming the dealer was honest, never betting what she couldn't afford to lose. Joshua saw it too. You think he's still on us? He asked one night, voice low. Sarah didn't answer right away. She listened first. Listened to the street outside. Listened to the silence between questions. He never left, she said. He just upgraded. Joshua clenched his jaw. He had survived slavery, survived patrols, survived the war, but this version of control confused him. There was no chain to point at, no overseer to curse, just men with badges saying the same things in softer tones. And Murphy wasn't alone. The city started filling up with men like him, former riders, former enforcers. Men who knew how to intimidate without leaving marks. Men who understood that paperwork could be a weapon if you held it right. They stopped people for loitering, for walking without purpose, for being in the wrong place too long, for being too free. One night Joshua didn't come home on time. Sarah waited, then waited longer. She didn't panic. Panic makes noise. She counted minutes like currency. When Joshua finally came through the door, his shirt was torn and his hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage trying to break loose. "They stopped me," he said. "Said I didn't have proof I belonged where I was working." Sarah's chest tightened. "Who?" Joshua didn't want to say the name. He didn't have to. Murphy had taken his time, asked questions that didn't need answers. Made Joshua explain himself twice, 3 times, told him to remember his place, then let him go, same play, same message. Sarah understood then that this wasn't about passes anymore, or contracts, or rules. It was about reminding them that survival still came with permission, and permission could be revoked. Sarah started talking to people quietly, women first, then men she trusted, not speeches, just observations. Notice who stops who. Notice who never gets stopped. Notice how they always say it's for your own good. She wasn't organizing, not officially. She was mapping, gathering intelligence the way dangerous people do when they don't have weapons. Murphy noticed the shift. One afternoon he caught her alone near the edge of the district. No crowd, no witnesses. He didn't reach for her, didn't raise his voice. "Still walking careful," he said. "Smart." Sarah met his eyes, no fear, just clarity. "I walk where I'm allowed." Murphy smiled thin. "That's the thing," he said. "Allowed changes." He leaned closer, lowering his voice the way men do when they want the moment to belong to them. "You ever think about what happens when folks like you forget who keeps order?" Sarah didn't blink. "I think about what happens when men confuse order with control," she said. For a second, something dark flickered behind Murphy's smile. Not anger, interest. That's when Sarah knew she'd stepped onto a line that couldn't be erased. Murphy straightened up, adjusted his badge, took a step back. "Careful," he said. "Talking like that gets remembered." Sarah watched him walk away, knowing something else now too. Men like Murphy didn't forgive, they collected, and sooner or later they came back to cash in. That night Sarah didn't sleep, because she could feel it in her bones. The board was set, the pieces were moving, and the next encounter wouldn't end with a warning. Murphy made his move on a Sunday. That told Sarah everything she needed to know. Sundays were supposed to be clean, church clothes, public faces, respectability on display. But Murphy understood optics. He knew the crowd gave him cover. Witnesses didn't matter when they were trained not to see. Joshua was walking home from work when they boxed him in. Not rough, not loud, just precise. 2 deputies flanking. Murphy a step behind, letting the badge do the talking. "Routine," Murphy said, like he was discussing the weather. "Got a report." Joshua kept his hands where they could see them. He'd learned that lesson young. He spoke slow. "What report?" Murphy shrugged. "Suspicious movement, unclear employment." Joshua produced the contract. Again, clean, signed, current. Murphy didn't tear it this time. He folded it, slid it into his pocket. "Verification," he said. "Come with us." That's how it happens when the rules are a net instead of a wall. You don't argue the mesh. You get pulled into it. They took Joshua down a side street, not the station. Not yet. A holding room behind a storefront that used to sell feed. A place that smelled like old wood and knew her fear. Sarah found out because she always found out. A woman came running. Breathless. Words tripping over each other. "They got him." Sarah didn't ask who. She stood up, smoothed her dress, and made a choice that felt like stepping onto ice that might not hold. She went to the station. The room went quiet when she walked in. Men stopped shuffling papers, stopped pretending they were busy. Murphy looked up last. There it was again, that look. The one that said the game had come full circle. "Looking for something?" he asked. "My husband," Sarah said, clear, controlled. "He was taken." Murphy leaned back. "Taken's a strong word." "Then use a weaker one," she said, "and give him back." A couple deputies shifted, not in her favor, not against her, just uneasy. They could feel the tension. could smell the decision in the air. Murphy stood, came around the desk slow. He liked the walk, the way it made people feel small. "You've been busy," he said quietly, "talking, watching, making folks uncomfortable." Sarah didn't deny it. "Comfort's expensive," she said. "Some of us can't afford it." Murphy smiled. "You ever notice," he said, "how people who ask questions end up causing trouble?" Sarah met his gaze. Trouble usually starts with men who hate being questioned. The room held its breath. Murphy stepped closer, close enough that only she could hear him. "You think this is about Joshua," he said. "This is about you." Sarah felt the edge then, the place where survival turns into something else. "What happens now?" she asked. Murphy's eyes flicked toward the back door, toward the room where Joshua sat, waiting, listening. "Now," Murphy said, "you learn when to stop." Sarah nodded once. She turned and walked out without another word, not because she was beaten, because she understood leverage. Outside, the street moved like nothing had happened. Horses passed, people laughed, the city breathed. Sarah didn't go home. She went to the one place Murphy didn't control the same way: the church. By nightfall, people were whispering names, dates, stops that didn't add up. Men taken and returned bruised. Women questioned too long, papers disappearing. By morning, Murphy had a problem, not loud, not official, but dangerous. Because once people start comparing notes, the game changes. Murphy stood in his office, staring at the street, jaw tight. He could feel it slipping, not power, not yet, but certainty. And when certainty goes, violence usually follows. Joshua was released at sundown, quiet, shaken, alive. Murphy watched him leave. Then he turned to a deputy and said something that made the room colder. "Next time," he said, "we do it clean." Sarah felt it before she heard it. The threat wasn't over, it had just decided to escalate. When a man says next time, he's already chosen violence. Sarah knew it the moment Joshua walked back through the door. Alive didn't mean safe. Alive just meant postponed. She touched his face, counted him, no broken bones, no blood she could see. But his eyes had shifted. He'd seen how close the edge really was. "He told me to remember my place," Joshua said, quiet, ashamed even though he shouldn't have been. "Said he could lose the paperwork next time." "What?" Sarah nodded. "That's how they warn you." She didn't cry, didn't rage. She did something more dangerous. She planned. Murphy escalated the pressure the way professionals do: indirect, inspection, sudden rule changes, deputies lingering too long near certain houses, jobs disappearing for people who talk too freely, not punishment, conditioning. Sarah watched the pattern tight. She noticed which men Murphy trusted, which ones drank with him, which ones avoided his eyes. Every system leaks information if you know where to listen. Then one night a boy didn't come home. 17, new free papers, working late hauling crates by the river, stopped for questioning. Never returned. By morning his mother was screaming in the street. Murphy called it an accident. Sarah called it the signal. That was when she understood something most people miss. Power doesn't fear anger, it fears exposure that comes with coordination. So Sarah stopped playing defense. She started writing things down, not names, patterns, times, routes, which deputies were present when someone vanished, who signed which order, where paperwork always seemed to fail. She didn't keep the notes in one place. She trusted no single hiding spot. She trusted people instead, but only pieces of the truth to each one, distributed risk, like a chessboard where every pawn knows one square. Murphy sensed the shift. He ran into Sarah again near dusk, deliberately this time. No witnesses close enough to hear, just enough to see. "You moving fast," he said. "Careful you don't trip." "What?" Sarah smiled, small and polite. "Funny, you've been slowing down." Murphy's smile didn't answer back. "You think you're untouchable now?" he asked. "I think," Sarah said, "that stories travel faster than horses." That landed. Murphy leaned in, voice sharp now, the mask slipping. "You keep pushing," he said, "and something's going to happen you can't walk away from." Sarah didn't step back. "Something already did," she said. "I survived it." That night Murphy made his decision. Orders were given. Quiet ones. Joshua was to be arrested again, this time officially. Charges vague enough to stretch, long enough to break him, long enough to teach Sarah the cost of defiance. But Murphy made one mistake. He assumed the board was his alone. When the deputies arrived at Sarah's door, they found it open, empty, too empty. No panic, no flight marks, just absence. Murphy stared at the doorway longer than necessary, because for the first time he didn't know where his opponent was, and that's the moment every powerful man fears most. When the person he's been hunting stops running and starts choosing where the collision happens. Somewhere in the city, Sarah was already making the next call, and Murphy was about to learn that control doesn't disappear loudly, it fractures, quietly. Murphy learned the hard way that silence can be organized. By the next morning, his desk was cluttered with problems that didn't look connected: missing logs, delayed reports, witnesses who suddenly couldn't remember details. Nothing dramatic. Nothing he could arrest, but the machine wasn't moving like it used to. Joshua hadn't been found, not at home, not at work, not anywhere Murphy could grab without making noise. And Sarah was invisible. That scared him more than open rebellion ever could, because rebellion gives you a target. Invisibility gives you uncertainty. Murphy started leaning on people harder. That only widened the cracks. Deputies began asking questions they hadn't asked before. Clerks misfiled things. A judge postponed a hearing without explanation. Small things, but small things pile up. Word started spreading outside the neighborhood. Church leaders talked. Merchants complained about harassment. Even a white shop owner filed a grievance, quietly, carefully, about deputies chasing away his customers. Murphy's superiors noticed the smoke before they saw the fire. "Ease up," one of them told him. "You're drawing attention." Murphy nodded. He always nodded. Then he ignored it. He went hunting. Joshua was found 2 nights later, beaten, not broken, dumped near the river like a message written in flesh. Sarah found him before dawn. She didn't scream, didn't beg God, didn't collapse. She looked at his injuries, memorized them, and did something Murphy never expected. She let Joshua be seen, not hidden, not cleaned up too fast, seen. By midday, people were whispering again, but now the whispers had weight. Faces. Details that lined up too clean to dismiss. That afternoon, a man from the city came asking questions. Not a friend, not an enemy, just curious. And curiosity is dangerous to men like Murphy. Murphy paid Sarah a visit that night. No badge, no deputies, just him. He stood outside her door long enough for her to decide whether she'd open it. She did. "End this," he said, "no pretense left. You don't win this." Sarah studied him, the man, not the badge, not the role. "You already lost," she said. "You just don't know where yet." Murphy's voice dropped. "I can still ruin you." Sarah nodded. "I know." A beat. "Can you ruin everyone?" she asked. That's when Murphy understood the scope of the problem. This wasn't one woman anymore. This was a network he couldn't see, a story he couldn't rewrite fast enough. He left without another word. 3 weeks later, Murphy was reassigned, quietly, officially for administrative reasons. No charges, no justice, just removal. Joshua healed, slowly, with scars that would never fade. Sarah stayed, not because she trusted the system, because she understood something deeper. Power doesn't fall in one blow, it erodes. It rots from inside when enough people refuse to carry it. Murphy rode out of the district one last time, no ceremony, no crowd. He looked back once. Sarah was watching from a distance, not smiling, just remembering, because she knew something he didn't. Men like him don't disappear, they wait. And somewhere, someday, under a different badge, with a different name, the same game would try to start again. But this time, someone would remember how to end it. Murphy didn't vanish. Men like that never do. He went somewhere quieter, somewhere smaller. A place where his name didn't carry echoes yet. New desk, new badge, same instincts, same appetite for order that bent toward control. Sarah felt it before anyone brought news. Power leaves fingerprints, and she'd learned how to read them. Life settled, but it didn't soften. Joshua healed enough to work again. Sarah kept moving through the city with that same deliberate calm, like someone who knows peace is temporary and plans accordingly. People treated her different now. Not openly. Not with ceremony, just a little more space. A little more listening. She never claimed leadership. That was important. Leaders get cut down, observers survive. Years passed. New uniforms came in. New laws, same stops, same questions, different words. Sarah watched a young officer one afternoon, too eager, too confident. She saw the way he asked for papers he didn't need, saw how his hand rested near his weapon, not nervous, just comfortable. She recognized that comfort. That night she told Joshua something she'd never said out loud. They train them early, she said. Not how to protect, how to decide who needs protecting. Joshua nodded. He'd learned that lesson with his body. Murphy's name came up again years later, casual, like gossip. He's back in the state, someone whispered. Different town, different title. Sarah didn't react. She didn't need to. She knew the pattern. Somewhere Murphy was telling himself the same story he'd always told, that he was keeping order, that the world needed men like him. That the problem was never the system, just the people who didn't know their place. Sarah stood at her door that evening and looked out at the street, children running, voices laughing, life insisting on itself. She allowed herself one breath of something close to peace. Then she stepped back inside and closed the door, because she understood the last rule of the game. You don't win by believing it's over. You win by staying ready when it starts again. And somewhere out there, a man with a familiar hunger was putting on a uniform. Already looking for the next road. The city never announced when it circled back, it just did. Sarah noticed the signs first. She always did. Patrols getting bolder at dusk. Questions getting longer. Stops happening where they hadn't before. Same pressure, new hands, different men, same posture. Joshua felt it too. The way work dried up for people who spoke too much. The way certain doors closed without explanation. The way fear slid back into conversations like it had been invited. One night Sarah heard a name again, not Murphy, someone younger, someone learning fast. He's got backing, a woman whispered. Says he's cleaning things up. Sarah understood immediately. Every generation gets its Murphy. She sat alone that evening, candle low, thinking through the board, not angry, not tired, focused. She had lived long enough to see the trick, how systems don't need the same men to survive, just the same silence, the same permission. Joshua came in late, tense. They stopped a boy near the river, he said. No reason. What? Sarah closed her eyes. Did anyone watch? She asked. Joshua nodded, more than before. That mattered. Sarah stood and wrapped her shawl tight. Then we start again, she said. Joshua looked at her. You sure? Sarah met his eyes, steady as ever. They think memory fades, she said. It doesn't, it waits. Outside, the street was loud with life. Inside, Sarah was already moving pieces into place. Quiet conversations, careful timing, stories told just loud enough to travel, because she knew something the men in uniforms never learned. Fear spreads fast, but so does awareness. And the next time someone stepped onto a dark road thinking they owned it, they might find out the game had changed. The first mistake the new man made was thinking history was tired. He walked like Murphy used to, same confidence, same slow turn of the head when he scanned a block, same way of letting his shadow arrive before his words. Sarah saw him once from across the street and didn't need a name. He was young enough to believe he was original. That's always how it starts. He stopped a man outside the bakery one afternoon, asked for papers he didn't need, held them too long, smiled like patience was generosity. People watched, not like before. Nobody shouted. Nobody rushed in, but they watched, counted seconds, memorized faces. That night Sarah spoke to 3 people, only 3. Each of them spoke to 3 more, not about anger, about memory. Write it down, she told them. Not names, movements, times, who stands where when nothing's supposed to be happening. By the end of the week, the city felt different, not calmer, sharper. The new man noticed. He started writing with backup, started choosing corners instead of crowds, started asking questions about Sarah without saying her name. That's when Joshua knew it was coming back around. They're circling, he said. Sarah nodded. Means they don't know where the center is. The stop happened 2 nights later. Not Joshua, not Sarah. A boy, too young to understand how thin the line was. He talked back, not loud, just honest. The man struck him once, clean, public, the crowd froze, then something changed. A woman stepped forward, then another. Then a man, no yelling, just presence, just witnesses refusing to look away. The officer hesitated. That half-second mattered. By morning, the story had moved faster than he could. By noon, someone official was asking questions. By night, the man was being told to stand down until things cooled. Sarah heard about it last. She stood at her window looking out at the street that had taken so much and given so little back. Joshua came up behind her. "You think it's over?" he asked. Sarah shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "It never is." She turned from the window, already feeling the next tension forming, already sensing the pushback that always comes when power feels threatened, because she knew the final truth. Every system resists being exposed, and when it does, it doesn't whisper, it lashes out. Somewhere in the city, a decision was being made, and this time the collision wouldn't be quiet. Backlash never comes empty-handed. It comes dressed as policy, comes wearing calm voices and official language, comes pretending it's about safety while sharpening something underneath. Sarah felt it the morning the patrol routes changed. More men, longer shifts, fewer explanations. That wasn't coincidence, that was response. The city was being reminded who still held the lever. Joshua noticed the difference immediately. "They're moving together now," he said, "like they got orders." Sarah nodded. "Means someone's scared." Scared men don't retreat, they consolidate. The knock came after dark, not forceful, not polite, just deliberate. Joshua moved first. Sarah stopped him with a touch. "I got this," she said. She opened the door to find two officers she didn't know, young, clean. "Careful not to look inside." "Routine check," one said. Sarah stepped outside and closed the door behind her. "What routine?" she asked. They exchanged a look. That hesitation told her everything. "New compliance review," the other said. "We just need to ask a few questions." Sarah smiled faintly. "You already know the answers." That made one of them uncomfortable. The other leaned in. "You've been busy," he said. "People talking." "They always do," Sarah replied. He studied her. "Talking leads to problems." "Problems," Sarah said softly, "usually start when people get tired of being quiet." The officers left without arrests, without threats, but the message lingered. By morning, Joshua's job was gone, no reason given, no appeal, pressure applied where it hurt. Sarah felt the weight of it. She didn't pretend otherwise, but she also recognized desperation when she saw it. They were trying to starve the fire. That afternoon, a group gathered at the church, not a protest, a meeting. Men and women standing shoulder to shoulder, voices low, intent focused. Sarah didn't speak long. "They want us separate," she said, "because separate people break easier." Eyes locked on her. "They want us scared," she continued, "because scared people don't remember." She paused. "We remember." That was enough. By nightfall, letters were being written, complaints filed, names removed where they could be, stories sent beyond the city line. The system felt it, and when systems feel pain, they strike. A warrant was issued, not for Sarah, for Joshua. That was the escalation. Sarah read the paper without shaking. She folded it once, then she looked up. "Now," she said, "they've made it personal." Outside, boots were already moving, and this time the knock wouldn't ask. The boots didn't knock, they surrounded. Sarah heard them before they reached the door. She always did. Rhythm gives people away, so does confidence. Joshua was already standing, no panic, just readiness. "They want me," he said. Sarah shook her head. "They want leverage." She stepped to the door before they could force it, opened it herself. The street was crowded with uniforms, too many for one man, too many for a conversation. A familiar face stood near the back, not Murphy, but someone who'd learned from him. "Joshua Williams," the man called out. "You're under arrest." "For what?" Sarah asked. The man smiled like he'd been waiting. "Interfering, incitement, failure to comply with lawful order." Joshua took one step forward. Sarah caught his arm. "Go," she said quietly, slow. They cuffed him hard enough to send a message, not enough to leave marks. As they took him, Sarah locked eyes with the man in charge. "You think this ends it," she said. He leaned in close. "I think this reminds you." The wagons rolled off. The street exhaled. Sarah stood there long after they were gone. Then she turned and went inside. She didn't cry, she wrote. She wrote everything, times, names, routes, every move they'd made to get here. She sent pieces of it everywhere, churches, papers, offices that pretended not to see until it was too loud to ignore. By morning, Joshua was no longer invisible. People were asking questions. By afternoon, officials were making calls they didn't want to make. By evening, someone from the state was coming. The man who ordered Joshua's arrest felt it slipping. He came back that night, alone. "You don't know when to stop," he said. Sarah didn't look afraid. "No," she said. "I know exactly when." He stared at her, realizing too late that he'd pulled a thread tied to more than one knot. Joshua was released at dawn. No charges, no apology, just a warning wrapped in silence. Sarah walked him home. They didn't celebrate, they listened. Because the city wasn't done reacting, and neither was the system that had just been embarrassed. Somewhere, someone was deciding how far they were willing to go to put the fear back where it belonged. And the next move wouldn't come with paperwork. When paperwork disappears, violence starts improvising. Sarah felt the shift before anything happened. The city got quieter in the wrong way. Doors closed earlier. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Men who usually lingered on corners went home before dark. Fear was being reintroduced, carefully. Joshua noticed the patrols weren't moving in groups anymore. They were splitting up, hunting smaller. That wasn't de-escalation. That was targeting. "They're done pretending," he said. Sarah nodded. "Means they want an example." Examples are never random. The fire started 2 blocks away just after midnight. Not big. Not enough to draw the whole city. Just enough to wake people up and remind them how fast things could burn. By morning, a man who'd spoken too freely had been found beaten near the docks. Alive, barely. The kind of message meant to travel. Sarah stood over him with others, listening to his breath, counting the cost. "This is them saying they still can," Joshua said. Sarah's jaw tightened. "This is them admitting they're losing." Because systems don't lash out when they're winning. They lash out when control starts slipping through fingers they can't close fast enough. That afternoon, Sarah made the most dangerous choice yet. She stepped into the open. Not a march, not a shout. A meeting announced publicly, in daylight. In the church everyone knew. Names weren't said. Accusations weren't screamed. Facts were shared, calmly. One by one people spoke, short, clear, times matched. Stories overlapped too clean to dismiss. The room filled past capacity. By the time it ended, the city couldn't pretend anymore. That night Sarah walked home alone, on purpose. The streetlights flickered like they always did. Shadows stretched long, familiar. Halfway down the block she heard footsteps that weren't trying to hide. She stopped. So did they. A man stepped out from between 2 buildings. No uniform, no badge, just intent. "You don't know when to quit," he said. Sarah looked at him the way she'd looked at Murphy all those years ago. Calm, assessing. "I know exactly why I won't," she said. He moved closer. And that's when other footsteps answered. Not running. Not shouting, just arriving from doorways, from corners, from behind him. Witnesses. The man froze, calculated, then backed away. Power doesn't like crowds when it isn't in control of them. Sarah kept walking. Behind her, the city breathed differently. She didn't believe it was over. She never would. But she knew this. The road that once took everything from her didn't own her anymore. And the system that taught her to be afraid had finally learned something it never expected. She remembered. And memory, when shared, is dangerous. That's where this part of the story pauses. Not with victory, but with balance restored just long enough for the next threat to decide whether it's worth showing its face. Balance never lasts. It just gives you time to breathe before the next test. Sarah knew that. She felt it in the way the patrols pulled back just a little too neatly. The way silence returned too fast, like a room after a lie has been accepted for the moment. That kind of quiet isn't peace. It's recalculation. Joshua noticed it too. "They're letting it cool," he said. Sarah shook her head. "They're letting us think it cooled." Because men who lose control don't walk away. They regroup. They change faces. They find new rules that sound neutral and cut sharp. A week passed, then another. Jobs reopened, stops slowed, people relaxed just enough to forget how close it had been. That's when the new ordinance appeared, posted clean. Written calm, no raised voices. No boots, curfews, permits, assembly limits, temporary measures. Sarah read it once, then again. Same game, new ink. They learned, Joshua said. Yes, Sarah replied, but not what they think. Because this time the memory was spread too wide. Too many people knew how it started. Too many had watched it almost snap shut again. The first enforcement came quick. A man fined for standing too long. A woman questioned for walking after dusk. Small cuts meant to bleed patience out of a crowd. Sarah didn't respond immediately. She waited. Then she moved. Not loud, not central. She stepped back into the role that had kept her alive all these years, the one who sees the board, not the applause. She spoke to clerks who typed the notices, to men who carried messages between offices, to women who cleaned rooms where decisions were made after hours. Power always forgets who hears everything. Within days, inconsistencies surfaced. Papers didn't align. Orders contradicted each other. Enforcement looked selective when laid side by side. Questions rose again, this time from places that mattered. Someone higher up started asking who drafted the ordinance. Another someone asked why. That's when the pressure turned inward. The men who'd pushed hardest began turning on each other. Quiet blame. Subtle distancing. Nobody wanted their name too close to the spark if it turned into a fire. Sarah watched it happen with no satisfaction, just understanding. One evening, she and Joshua sat in silence, listening to the city settle. "You think they'll come back at you?" he asked. Sarah didn't answer right away. "Yes," she said finally, "but not the same way." What? She looked out the window, eyes steady. "They'll wait, they always do." And somewhere in some office, a man was already deciding whether Sarah was worth the trouble she'd become. That decision hadn't been made yet, which meant the danger wasn't gone. It was just thinking. Danger thinks best when it feels embarrassed. Sarah sensed it in the delay, too long to be coincidence, too quiet to be comfort. When pressure turns inward, someone always looks for a cleaner solution. Not noise, not policy, removal. Joshua heard the rumor first. Not from the streets, those were watched, but from a man who fixed locks for city offices and listened more than he spoke. "They asking about her," the man said. "Not officially, just carefully." Sarah didn't flinch. "They always ask," she said. "Question is what answer they want." The answer this time wasn't arrest, it was isolation. People Sarah trusted began getting visits. Friendly ones, soft warnings wrapped in concern, suggestions to stay out of things. Jobs offered somewhere else, quiet incentives to step away, divide the circle, starve the center, classic. Sarah adjusted immediately. She stopped meeting in groups, stopped appearing predictable. Let others speak while she listened from the edges. Power hates edges, can't grab them clean. Then the accident happened. A wagon lost control near the market, almost took out 3 people. No one hurt badly, but the driver swore someone tampered with the wheel. Sarah heard the detail that mattered. The man who inspected the wagon afterward worked for the same office that signed patrol assignments. That wasn't escalation, that was rehearsal. That night, Sarah sat alone, lamp low, weighing something she'd avoided for years. Leaving, not running, relocating, choosing distance as strategy. Joshua sensed it. "You thinking about disappearing?" Sarah nodded once, temporarily. Joshua didn't argue. He understood the cost of staying visible too long. They planned quietly. No goodbyes, no signals, but power moves faster when it smells retreat. 2 nights before they were set to go, Sarah was followed, not closely, not sloppy. Someone trained, she didn't speed up, didn't turn around, she led him where she wanted. A narrow stretch of street, houses closed, windows open. She stopped. "So," she said without looking back, "who sent you?" The footsteps halted. The man stepped into view, not young, not reckless, not a street brute. "You're causing problems," he said, "big ones." Sarah turned, studied him. "You wouldn't be here if that were true," she said. "I'd already be gone." He didn't smile. "They want this quiet." "So do I," Sarah replied. Difference is, I don't need anyone hurt for that. A pause, he recalculated. She could see it. Finally, he stepped back. Leave, he said, now and don't come back. Sarah nodded. Tell them, she said, that erasing people doesn't erase what they've already taught. She walked away before he could answer. By dawn, the plans changed. They left that day, not chased, not broken, strategic. Sarah looked back once as the city slipped behind them, not with regret, with certainty, because she knew this truth better than anyone. You don't end a system by standing in front of it forever. Sometimes, you survive long enough to outgrow its reach. And somewhere behind her, power was already telling itself a lie. That the problem had left, that the memory had moved on, and that lie would cost them later. Danger thinks best when it feels embarrassed. Sarah sensed it in the delay, too long to be coincidence, too quiet to be comfort. When pressure turns inward, someone always looks for a cleaner solution. Not noise, not policy, removal. Joshua heard the rumor first. Not from the streets, those were watched, but from a man who fixed locks for city offices and listened more than he spoke. They asking about her, the man said. Not officially, just carefully. Sarah didn't flinch. They always ask, she said. Question is what answer they want. The answer this time wasn't arrest, it was isolation. People Sarah trusted began getting visits. Friendly ones, soft warnings wrapped in concern, suggestions to stay out of things. Jobs offered somewhere else, quiet incentives to step away, divide the circle, starve the center, classic. Sarah adjusted immediately. She stopped meeting in groups, stopped appearing predictable. Let others speak while she listened from the edges. Power hates edges, can't grab them clean. Then the accident happened. A wagon lost control near the market, almost took out 3 people. No one hurt badly. But the driver swore someone tampered with the wheel. Sarah heard the detail that mattered. The man who inspected the wagon afterward worked for the same office that signed patrol assignments. That wasn't escalation, that was rehearsal. That night, Sarah sat alone, lamp low, weighing something she'd avoided for years. Leaving, not running, relocating, choosing distance as strategy. Joshua sensed it. You thinking about disappearing? Sarah nodded once, temporarily. Joshua didn't argue. He understood the cost of staying visible too long. They planned quietly. No goodbyes, no signals, but power moves faster when it smells retreat. 2 nights before they were set to go, Sarah was followed, not closely, not sloppy. Someone trained, she didn't speed up, didn't turn around. She led him where she wanted, a narrow stretch of street, houses close, windows open. She stopped. So, she said without looking back, who sent you? The footsteps halted. The man stepped into view, not young, not reckless, not a street brute. You're causing problems, he said, big ones. Sarah turned, studied him. You wouldn't be here if that were true, she said. I'd already be gone. He didn't smile. They want this quiet. So do I, Sarah replied. Difference is, I don't need anyone hurt for that. A pause, he recalculated. She could see it. Finally, he stepped back. Leave, he said, now and don't come back. Sarah nodded. Tell them, she said, that erasing people doesn't erase what they've already taught. She walked away before he could answer. By dawn, the plans changed. They left that day, not chased, not broken, strategic. Sarah looked back once as the city slipped behind them, not with regret, with certainty, because she knew this truth better than anyone. You don't end a system by standing in front of it forever. Sometimes, you survive long enough to outgrow its reach. And somewhere behind her, power was already telling itself a lie. That the problem had left, that the memory had moved on, and that lie would cost them later. Distance doesn't erase influence, it sharpens it. Sarah learned that in the quiet, in the space where nobody watched her walk, where footsteps behind her didn't mean danger by default, where silence didn't carry threats. They settled somewhere smaller. Not untouched, nothing ever is, but less obsessed with control. A place where the game was played slower. Joshua found work. Honest, hard, the kind that leaves you tired but intact. Sarah watched, always watched. She didn't speak about the city they left, didn't warn, didn't preach. She listened instead, learned the new patterns, the new men, the new excuses, because systems travel. They always do. Years passed. The kind of years that age your hands but not your instincts. Then one afternoon, she heard the familiar tone in a stranger's voice. "You don't need to be here," he told a man outside a shop. "Move along." The words were polite, the posture was. Sarah felt the old awareness snap back into place like a blade sliding home. Same game, different board. That night she wrote a letter. Not angry, not accusatory, precise. She sent it to 3 places, then waited. Within weeks questions surfaced, not enough to stop anything, enough to slow it. The man outside the shop started choosing different corners, different times. He felt it too. Joshua asked her one evening, "You ever get tired of this?" Sarah thought about the road, the moon, the scraps of paper falling. "No," she said, "I get tired of pretending it's new." She knew she wouldn't see the end of it, not in her lifetime, not clean, not complete, but she also knew something that kept her steady. Every time the system reset, it needed teachers, and she'd learned the lesson well. One day, long after she was gone, someone else would feel that shift in the air, that pressure that doesn't belong to weather. And they'd recognize it, not because a book told them, because someone like Sarah had lived it forward. She stood at her window that night, older now, slower but clear. The game hadn't ended, but it wasn't invisible anymore. And that meant the next generation wouldn't walk into it blind. That was the real win, not victory, continuity. And somewhere power was still convincing itself that time would wash this all away. It never does, because memory knows how to wait. Time doesn't retire the game, it just changes the players. Sarah felt her body slow before her mind ever did. Bones complain, breath shortens, but awareness, that stayed sharp, sharper even. Age strips away noise, leaves only what matters. She started teaching without calling it teaching. A look held a second longer. A question asked twice. A pause before answering authority too quickly. Young folks didn't always understand why, not at first. "Why you always watching?" One girl asked her once, half joking. Sarah smiled. "Because things that hurt you don't always announce themselves." That girl would remember that years later on a night she couldn't explain why her skin tightened when a uniform slowed near her. Sarah never saw Murphy again, but that didn't mean he was gone. Men like him don't need names to continue. They leave instructions behind, habits, traditions disguised as common sense. Somewhere far off he might have convinced himself he'd won. That pushing Sarah out proved something, that the system held. He would have been wrong, because Sarah didn't leave empty-handed. She left seeds. Stories passed quietly, lessons hidden inside warnings. Memory folded into everyday behavior so it couldn't be confiscated or torn up like a pass on a dark road. Near the end, Joshua asked her something he'd never dared before. "If you could go back," he said, "would you still walk that road?" Sarah didn't answer right away. She closed her eyes and saw it clearly. The moon, the horses, the sound of paper ripping. "Yes," she said finally, "but I'd walk it knowing exactly what it was." Joshua nodded. That mattered, because the danger was never the road. It was believing the road was safe just because someone said it was. Sarah understood something most systems depend on people never realizing. Control only works when it's unchallenged and unremembered. She broke the second part. When she died, it wasn't marked by headlines, just a small gathering, quiet respect, people standing straighter than they realized. Someone told a story, someone else corrected a detail. Another added one more piece. That's how it survives, not as history, as instinct. And somewhere right now, someone is walking a road they think they're allowed to walk. Someone is trusting a rule that was never meant to protect them. The question is whether the game is still being played. The question is, will they recognize it in time? Or will they have to learn the way Sarah did?